This is the Valley, a vanished world from a forgotten time. Here on the Welsh borders, a farm is being run by 5 hand-picked experts, as it would have been nearly 400 years ago. Using only resources available in the year 1620, they are labouring for a full calendar year, turning the clock back to rediscover a way of life from an age gone by.
It's June already and our 10th month here on the farm. 400 years ago, the farmer's wife and the maids would have been switching their main dairy production from butter towards cheese. It was also a time of year when many parishes up and down the country sort of had a party or sort of midsummer festivals of one sort or another, and we should be doing the same. We're going to have a great big bonfires outside. The most important project, however, 400 years ago at this time of year, was shearing the sheep, because that was people's main cash crop.
The warmer weather makes June an ideal time to shear the sheep. But the first task for Stuart, Alex and Fons is to give their flock of Cotswolds a good old wash at the local stream, which means getting as wet as the animals. Each Cotswold sheep weighs in at about 50 kilos, and waterlogged, they become even heavier.
Bits and pieces in here. We don't want to overdo it here. We're not using any soap products or anything, just using the stream water. And it's just bringing the dust out of the wool. You know, just giving it a soak, running my hands through it, trying not to get bitten by the flies as well. This is well documented in the period. I mean, this is the ideal way to wash your sheep, really. You've got running water, lovely and clean. I think this side's nearly done. It's never so heavy, this one.
What we're aiming to do here is get the worst of the mess off while they've still got the fleece on them, so that when they come to shear, it's going to be a lot cleaner and it dries a lot better when it's still on the sheep. Otherwise, imagine you've got this enormous sort of 10-pound woolly jumper rolled in a ball. It's never going to dry out. She's on her way, is she?
She's on her way, yeah.
Okay. Oh, I'm going to get my kids to take a bath. Here we go. On go.
That was quick.
June was a key time on farms for cheese production, the perfect excuse for Ruth and Chloe to cool off in the dairy.
Milk changes through the year. It's all to do with the grass that the cows are eating. So back in May, they were producing really, really rich, creamy milk, which made fantastic butter. But now the grass has changed, and we're finding that we're getting higher casein levels, which makes great cheese, but it's not quite so good for butter. So there's a sort of seasonality in dairy things.
The milk mixed with cream needs to be warmed to body temperature. Rather than putting it over a fire, it's simpler just to add some warm water.
And then to turn this milk into cheese, we have to use a sort of magic ingredient, really, called rennet, which 400 years ago was made from the stomach of a young calf, one that hadn't eaten grass yet, so very young, sort of first couple of weeks of life. And they would have slaughtered one calf in the spring, chosen one to sacrifice, really, to make cheese for the rest of the year.
The calf's stomach would be cleaned and salted. Gradually, the enzymes inside would turn the fluids into rennet, which curdles milk. There were alternatives to rennet, but they were not commonly used.
There are vegetarian options like nettles, lemon juice, vinegar you can use as well, all of which will turn the milk. You get a lower yield. It's not actually as cost effective in the end, so it's a bit of a false economy, but obviously it means you don't have to kill your calf. In a dairy of the period, you'd have cheeses at all different stages. The rennet's been working on this one overnight, and we've got some nice separation into the solid and the liquid, the curds and the whey. And we've got some already dripping, some that are pretty much ready to go into a press.
Halfway through the day, and Alex, Fons and Stuart are doing well. 4 sheep washed, 2 to go.
guys are very tricky customers. They know what's coming, well, they seem to enjoy it once they're in. This is Monty. I'd love a hand. He knows what's in store for him now.
Yeah, he knows the score, okay? Let's go.
Come on, switch your neck. Out the middle. That's it. That's switch your neck. Good job. That's a good fella. Where are you up to, Monty? Ooh. Don't put your hooves there.
Do you want a hand straightening that last bit
I
through?
think so. I've got all I can out, like with these paddles.
If I hold the cloth, do you want to...
Yeah, I'll lift it. Okay.
Once the curds and whey have separated and been turned, the solids need to be gathered in muslin, tied up and then left to drain.
Just let that drip just bit there. There we go. Now, if you grab those two sides so it doesn't spill sideways.
Right, where's this one going to go? Straight up there?
Straight
yeah?
up there.
Sorry. Oh, my lord. Got it? Oh, a little bit out of the edge. No,
The whey's dropping nice and clear,
I
which is
know.
a really good sign we've got
brilliant.
all the
Brilliant.
curd
Thank
out.
you for that.
It's been hard going down at the sheep washing pond, but Alex, Fons and Stuart have managed to get the job done and limit their injuries to just a few bruises. Now they can relax with a period potion, sheep washer's posset.
There's a farmer up in Yorkshire, a chap called Henry Best, who was writing a book of instruction for his sons in the early 1600s on how to run the farm. And he says that when you're doing the sheep washing, round about the middle of the day, the guy's been standing out there, he's done 60 sheep already, and he's freezing himself to death out there. So you fill him up with this concoction, hot milk poured into ale, and then add in breadcrumbs, nutmeg and enough pepper that it tastes hot. Now, I've got a nasty feeling with this one. I've overspiced it a little bit. You can be anaesthetised well enough to do another 60 sheep after one of those.
This is bad. I'm not a fan of sheep shearing. Was it posset?
Sheep washing.
Sheep washing.
Posset. Yes.
There isn't a sheep shearing posset, is there? This is an ordeal.
Another bright June day in the valley.
I see that there. Are you just about ready with that one?
Pretty much, yeah.
The sheep have dried out overnight, which means Alex, Stuart and Fons can press ahead with the shearing. It's something they've never done before. Using old-fashioned hand shears means their main challenge will be to avoid cutting off more than just wool.
These days it will take a specialist hand shearer about an hour to shear a sheep. We've got 6 sheep, so I very much doubt it's going to take us 6 hours because we're going to have to try and get into the groove. OK, Fons, which is the first proverbial lamb to the slaughter then?
Roper sheep's quite close.
Got it.
Yep. Yep. So we've got our first victim here. We're going to start at the arse end because that's where the wool sort of naturally peels away from the body of the sheep. Well, these sheep are big, very big, and they're strong. So I think it's going to be a day of pain.
Are we ready to go?
I think we are.
It's actually not that easy to kind of know where to start. We've got bits coming off. I very much doubt this is all going to come off in one piece, like a fleece. I very much suspect it's going to be bits and bobs.
You should be able to feel the difference.
Yeah, I can know what you mean. I know what you mean.
Of course, the sources give us the great advice of a good sheep shearer will shear a sheep well, and a bad sheep shearer will shear a sheep badly. However, we do know, and the new wool's got this sort of yellow hue and slightly more springy, so you should be able to see a break and also feel a break with the shears.
In the dairy, Ruth and Chloe start the day by getting on to the next stage of cheese production.
Once the rennet's done its thing and separated it out into curds and whey, well, rather like that, you know, the nursery rhyme, Little Miss Muffet sat on a tuffet eating her curds and whey. Actually, that rhyme comes from about this time. Dr. Muffet was her father was a famous doctor in the early 17th century. Anyway, once it's separated, this one's been dripping overnight and is mostly dry. That is cottage cheese. You don't have to do anything else to it, you can eat it straight away. This one we always intended to use that way, so I actually put some herbs in it to give it a bit of flavour. If you wanted to keep cheese, however, then you need to make hard cheeses that won't go off, and you'll be able to eat them all through the year then. And for that you need a cheese press, like this one here, which is just sort of a barrel with holes in the bottom.
The press needs to be lined with muslin, the solid curds plopped in, and then Ruth can squeeze out the last of the watery whey.
So to make something that's a bit like cheddar or Cheshire that will keep all the year, it's literally just a matter of pressing long enough and hard enough. I'll just pop a weight on that now. And the last bit of whey will quietly be squeezed out.
June was the big month for sheep shearing. If you went any earlier in the year, then you had the danger that the weather would turn cold, and if you can imagine running around in midwinter with no clothes on at all, it's very much like that for a sheep. You've only got to look at the thickness of wool that's coming off there in that pelt to see what a difference it's going to make to their insulation. If you go any later in the year, then the sheep are naturally going to shed that winter coat, so they're down to their fresh summer growth. Nowadays, when the fleece is worth less than the cost of actually shearing the sheep, you're still seeing farmers doing the shearing because of the animal welfare side of things. But in the 17th century, the wool is the big money earner.
While shearing went on, there would usually be a pot of Stockholm tar bubbling away, ready to dab onto any nicks.
Yeah, I've got a couple of nicks. There's one
there, actually.
just in there, yeah, as well.
They're only tiny, aren't they?
Little tiny ones. Stuart,
Yo,
Have you got that? Is that tar ready?
yeah, we're nice and warm.
I've just got a couple of nicks.
Your leg's gone to sleep there.
I suppose the tar seals it, doesn't it?
Here, look, have a look. Yeah, we've got a couple in here.
The tar was like a period antiseptic and plaster. It sealed up cuts, preventing flies from getting in and laying maggots.
Dear me. Starting to look like a Dalmatian now, isn't she?
I'm going to turn out the cheese that we've had in the press overnight and see what kind of a state it's in. 400 years ago, it would have been the decision of the dairymaids or the farmer or the farmer's wife what kind of cheese they wanted, whether they wanted a hard cheese or a softer brie camembert type cheese, which would obviously take less time in the press. So this one has come up very nicely, actually. Obviously, the shape of the press is making an imprint because it really is starting to look like the ones you buy in a big round from the supermarket. It's still quite crumbly, like a cottage cheese, but it's lost a lot of the liquid. It still tastes horrible, but I think with the maturing, if we leave it for a bit, it will gain quite a nice flavour.
At the time, it was reckoned that a clipper could shear 60 sheep in a day. So far, Alex and Fons have managed 4.
The first sheep we did, it took a while to get into it, but he's sped up something chronic now, which is good for me, because I'm having to straddle these sheep, which gets quite sweaty, especially in these breeches.
But now I've got a technique going where I'm kind of going with the contour. I'm not coming in at different angles, so I'm much more confident.
Alex will whiz through here, and when you get to the face and the ears and the eyes,
Yeah.
and especially underneath, it just takes so much longer because it's so intricate.
And when you start snipping around their nether regions,
They go nuts.
Yeah, not happy. Although Monty wasn't too bothered.
Sheep shearing was one of those events when all the community sort of came together, particularly on the big estates, to work at one particular job for just one day. Henry Best, who left us a good account of sheep shearing practices up in Yorkshire, describes how one of his neighbours used to hire a bagpiper who'd play for all the shearers, and then at the end of the day he'd organise a feast where he'd slaughter one of the old ewes and have this along with various cakes and other dishes, so that people felt they'd really been part of a community, not just sort of isolated labourers hired in for the day.
Once the press has removed all the whey, hard cheeses like this one can be left to mature.
You do, however, have to look after it quite carefully and tend it every day, really. So each day you have to turn it. And that's because, of course, gravity means that any moisture that's in the cheese will gradually sink to the bottom. And if you didn't turn them and just left them one way up, they'd get sort of hard and dry and crumbly on the top and sort of a bit soggy on the bottom. It wouldn't be very nice. I've got a bit of a mould or bloom coming on the surface of this. Well, there's no problem with that because that's going to stay on the surface on a rind. And I'm creating the rind as I'm turning it by wiping it all over every day with a nice clean cloth that's been just dipped in salt water. And the rind is really useful because it protects the inner cheese, keeps the moisture in, keeps the bacteria out. You don't need plastic over a cheese. The rind of a cheese does that thing for you. By the end of a 2 to 3 month period, we'll have a cheese that is finished and we'll then keep and store for a year at a time.
Wool was such a valuable commodity back in the 17th century that not even the scraps would have gone to waste.
They were collected up, washed to get rid of that crud, and could be used for stuffing pillows and mattresses. It was such a poor quality item that quite often the poor would come round at the end of a day's shearing, begging for a handout and be given a handful each to go away and add to their next pillow's worth.
The day is getting late, but the boys are pressing on, determined to get their flock finished.
The idea that 400 years ago they were doing 60 in a day is a pretty daunting prospect. However, the sheep were smaller. Well, small.
I'm having to brake fairly frequently now. Just my back just bending over and getting round. It's really starting to creak. And the other thing is the hand as well. Just doing that relentlessly.
Not only was the money from fleeces one of the key incomes for the farmers at the time, but it was also probably the greatest of the national exports. And quality fleeces, such as the ones we're getting from these Cotswolds, would have made things like broadcloths, which would have then been almost entirely sold to rich foreigners for their posy clothing.
Cheese. Oh, I do hope it tastes as good as it looks. I'm so proud of it so far. I've just really got my fingers
Aren't those
crossed.
presses wonderful things?
They are, actually.
The end of a long day, and with all their sheep sheared, Fons and Alex can recover with a jug of homemade beer.
Cheers. Successful day shearing?
Well, yeah. Apart from the aches and the pains.
I have to admit my hand's really hurting now.
We started getting pretty quick, didn't we?
Yeah,
That was good.
definitely. The first one, you noticed the first one? The first
Spotted.
Had
Spotted
about
like
4
a
or 5
Dalmatian.
nicks on that one leg. Didn't think we'd get them all done today, to be honest. It's been fairly exhausting. But it means we don't have to get up early to do them tomorrow.
No.
So we can have a bit of a lie-in tomorrow, hopefully.
We've had a fantastic day, haven't we?
Yeah.
Loads of wool.
Loads of wool and doing something as well which maybe never get the chance to do again, which is fantastic, really.
Yeah.
And I do feel after shearing the 6 of them, I'm not an expert, but I feel like, well, you know, that's something I could do, and that if I was, you know, stuck on this farm 400 years ago, I'd stand a fair chance of getting a fairly decent fleece off them. So.
Yeah. I mean, we're just getting so used to all the animals on the farm.
And the sheep are really quite low maintenance as well. They tend to hang out just in the top of the field, wander down once a day for a
Bit
drink.
of water, yeah. It's a great view, isn't it?
It is. You get a great sense of the valley as well, don't you, here? Just with the bank as it comes down there and you can see on the other side. Oh, look, there's a buzzard.
Oh, yeah.
Fantastic.
Today's an exceptional day in the valley. The team are going to celebrate midsummer. After Christmas, it was one of the biggest festivals in the calendar, which means getting an early start with the cooking.
We're making a much bigger meal today. We've got a lot of people coming over for a party. So we should be making sops in wine with the bread and some wine. We should be making elderflower fritters with the elderflowers from the hedgerows. We've also got mutton. It's a sensible time of year for people to kill an older sheep who's no longer really much useful. After you've sheared her, got the last crop of wool off her, and we shall be eating 2 of her back legs. We're making 1 boiled and 1 into meatballs shaped like pears. And then we've got some white pots, which are cream and rice. Using a lot of our dairy produce at the moment, including a cottage cheese. What else? Oh, lots and lots and lots of salad sort of things out of the garden, which is absolutely overflowing at the moment.
Could you pop that in?
Yeah.
The big leg needs to boil for a couple of hours.
With the bone, yeah?
Yes, the other bone would be nice. Give it a bit more flavour.
With the sheep shearing done, Alex, Stuart and Fons need to tackle another urgent seasonal task: weeding the wheat crop that they sowed last September.
One of the things that particularly strikes me is how the height has changed in grain over the last 400 years. This is already pushing about 4 foot against me, and when it finishes, it'll be about 5 or 6 feet high. At the period, you get occasional references to losing small cows, just disappear in the middle of a grain field, and you can't actually see them. The modern wheat, quite often it's down to about 2 foot these days, because they just look on all that stem as waste, and they'd rather put the nutrients into the heads in the modern varieties.
400 years ago, the long stems had a number of uses, from making straw rope to thatching.
For this task, I've consulted period documents to build my weeding sticks, which comprise of a hook here and a fork. And the idea is I just rest the hook behind the weed and then spear it down with the fork and just give it a yank, and that should pull the roots out.
As this site is kept as it was 400 years ago, no pesticides have been used. So that also means you get all the wild flowers growing and all the weeds, because one man's weed is another man's wild flower. And we're getting around 16 hours of sunlight a day, and we're always outside doing stuff. It's been amazing for the mood. I mean, everyone's just really upbeat. It's such a contrast to winter.
For the main dish of today's celebrations, Ruth is following a rather special period recipe.
The recipe we're following is from a book by a chap called Thomas Dawson, The Good Housewife's Jewel, and he published the first part in 1596. It's quite an unusual one. To make pears to be boiled in meat. We take a piece of leg of mutton, which we've got here, or veal, being mixed with a little of sheep's suet, which is what Chloe's doing, taking 4 raw egg yolks. Then take a little thyme and parsley chopped small, a few gooseberries, which I've been working on here. Put all these together, being seasoned with salt and saffron, cloves, beaten and wrought together.
It's starting to smell really nice, the mixture here. I can really smell the gooseberries coming out. It's lovely.
Then make rolls or balls like to a pear. And when you have done so, take the stalk of the sage and put it into the ends of your pears or balls. And that's going to then be sort of like simmered in broth. So they're going to look like, well, it's supposed to look like a fruit, but they're actually made out of meat. Quite often in these period recipes, making one thing look like another is a sort of common theme.
What do you want these, Stuart? These are 2.
Stuart, Alex and Fons are preparing a bonfire, the centrepiece for the revels. Ronald Hutton is a leading expert on the customs of the time. He has returned to the valley to help them rediscover the joys of midsummer revelry.
One of the vital traditional roles of midsummer is that it faces one of the most dangerous times of the year. Now, this sounds absurd these days, and what it actually faces is the school holidays. But July and August were an absolutely dreadful time, traditionally, for insects, which means you get plague, you get typhus, you get malaria. It's also a time when human raiders are most able to get in the seas and the high roads, which means that you have to face people coming to steal your chickens, ride their horses through your crops, lift your sheep, your cattle, your horses. And with all these dangers in prospect, midsummer is an opportunity to try and protect yourself magically against all these threats, and fire is the great resource to do it. Ever since the old Stone Age, fire is what you use. Cheers. And so symbolically, you light a whacking great fire, a sacred fire. You carry fire around your dwellings. You leap over the fire to protect yourself, and that way you stash in the good luck to try and ward off all the horrors to come in the next 2 months until the first frosts of autumn drive those fears back where they should be. Thank you.
Interestingly, Midsummer is one of those festivals that has virtually no Christian connotations. They hijacked all the other good ones like Easter and Christmas, but for some reason they seem to have left out Midsummer. And you get a lot of activities, as well as the fires and jumping through them ritually. You've got all the garlanding of the young ladies and the houses, which has very little to do with the sort of Christian tradition.
It's nice to be doing something else in this field other than running around and chasing sheep. Sheep which seem to be very disobedient. I think we ought to cook one tonight. Be nice.
The lamb pairs just need cooking over the fire, but there's still a great deal left to prepare for tonight.
We boiled up some cream and a little bit of sugar and some other spices to sweeten it, mace. As soon as it came off the fire, we poured in a load of rice, well, not a load, a little bit of rice, and that has caused us part cooked, part sort of soaked as it's cooled down. This just needs now some 4 egg yolks and 2 whole eggs, and then a little sprinkle of brown sugar on top, and we'll send it off to be baked so that it browns up nicely. It's sort of like the 17th century equivalent of, well, I suppose halfway between a baked custard and a rice pudding.
The sun is down. Time to let the midsummer revels begin. The tradition was for a great crowd from the surrounding villages to come and enjoy the hospitality.
Okay, Ronald, you can do the honours.
Thank you very much. Upon this vigil of St. Peter, I light this good fire for the happiness, health and well-being of our community, that it may purge the air of all unwholesome vapours.
Split. And 1, 2, 3.
For a start, the sheer power of the fire brings home to you this wonderful, thrilling, emotive effect it has. I believe you actually can burn away all misfortune, all evil, all threats from the air. Just the sparks are flying all around you. You literally are lighting up the night. It's your creation. You've done it.
Warmed by the fire, the revellers can gorge themselves on a 17th century style feast.
Oh, lovely. Oh, fancy one of those? What are these? Ruth, you having one? I'll share. Shall I share one with you?
Oh yeah, go on.
We'll stick one in my plate down here and we'll share one.
What do you think?
Rock cakes?
Oh, look, come on. I tried my best.
Indeed.
Give it a go. They taste pretty good.
Oh, good. They're very good.
Smell nice.
They are lovely.
This
Absolutely
is one
lovely.
of our lambs, is it?
Henrietta.
Nice.
Henrietta,
It's very
apparently.
nice. This is Henrietta. Are you enjoying Henrietta tonight, Fons?
As you did in life.
It's the height of summer on the farm, but for our team, the hardest work still lies ahead. Next time in the valley, it's July. The weather's hotting up. Time to bring in the new harvest from the garden. The team quite literally make hay while the sun shines. And there's washing to be done.